There are moments in life when the ground seems to shift beneath our feet, when nothing feels solid, when the plans we carefully built collapse as if they were made of paper. We wake up one day to find that the people we trusted have drifted away, that the doors we once thought were open have quietly closed, and that the noise of the world has receded, leaving behind a vast, almost unsettling silence. Most of us fear these moments. We interpret them as signs that we have failed, that life is punishing us, that we are cursed or unlucky. And yet, what if these moments are not a cruel accident, but an invitation? What if the quiet, the discomfort, the disorientation are not signs of abandonment, but signals that something within us is being recalibrated? What if this silence is not emptiness, but a kind of cosmic whisper, a guidance so subtle we can miss it if we are not paying attention? I have come to believe that life does not always speak in thunderclaps or dramatic revelations. Sometimes it speaks in the quiet pull toward a different direction. The universe rarely shouts. It nudges, it removes distractions, sometimes painfully, so that we can finally hear what matters. This process is not always comfortable. In fact, it can feel like a kind of death, the death of old identities, old attachments, old illusions. But on the other side of this death is rebirth, a clearer and more anchored version of ourselves. If you have ever felt like life was stripping you bare, like you were being pulled away from everything familiar, know this: you might be in the middle of your most important transformation. The first sign that this transformation is taking place is often isolation. Not just physical isolation, though sometimes that happens too, but emotional and spiritual isolation. Your circle becomes smaller. The invitations stop coming. The friendships that once defined you dissolve, sometimes without explanation. The opportunities you were counting on vanish, leaving you feeling as though you're being excluded from life itself. At first, this feels like rejection. You wonder what you did wrong, why you are being left out. But if you sit with this experience long enough, you begin to see that isolation is not punishment. It is preparation. It is a recalibration of your inner compass. It is the removal of noise so that you can finally hear your own thoughts. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote that we suffer more in our imagination than in reality, but in solitude, imagination begins to burn away. This is not just a poetic idea, it is a psychological truth. When you are alone, there is no one to perform for, no one to distract you from your own mind. You are forced to sit with yourself, your flaws, your fears, your longings. And though this confrontation is uncomfortable, it is also profoundly liberating. You begin to realize that your worth was never dependent on who applauded you or who validated you. You see that the deepest form of dignity comes from being who you are when no one is watching. Isolation becomes a kind of forge in which self-reliance is tempered, where inner strength is born. But the universe does not stop there. Once you are quiet enough to hear, it begins to send you patterns, lessons that repeat until you learn them. Perhaps you notice that the same kind of challenge keeps showing up in your life. The faces change, the circumstances shift, but the emotional trigger is eerily familiar. Maybe you keep experiencing betrayal or abandonment or criticism that cuts in the same place every time. You might be tempted to conclude that life is unfair, that you are cursed with bad luck or toxic people. But the Stoics would say otherwise. Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher, taught that what disturbs us is not events themselves, but our judgments about them. When the same wound keeps opening, it is not because fate is cruel, but because there is something in us that has not yet healed. The challenge is a mirror, reflecting the part of us that still needs to grow. The universe does not move on until we do. It keeps presenting the same exam until we learn how to respond differently. This is not a form of cosmic punishment, it is an opportunity. If you see life's difficulties as teachers, each painful moment becomes a chance to evolve. The lesson is not in the event itself, but in your reaction to it. When you learn to change your interpretation, to stop feeding the same old emotional loop, the challenge loses its power. This is not magic, it is maturity. It is the quiet triumph of a person who has stopped being at the mercy of circumstance and started becoming the master of their own mind. And as this process deepens, something else shifts inside you. The things that once thrilled you no longer do. The applause you once craved becomes meaningless. You stop chasing attention, stop needing to prove your worth to others. This does not happen overnight. It is often subtle. At first, it may feel like you are losing your spark. People around you might even call you detached, cold, unreachable. But what they are seeing is not a loss of vitality, but a redirection of energy. While the world runs toward noise, you find yourself walking toward peace. You start choosing quiet evenings over loud rooms, meaningful conversations over gossip, depth over spectacle. This is not detachment from life, but a deeper participation in it. You are no longer living for the applause of the crowd, but for the approval of your own conscience. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, described this as a kind of tranquility, the freedom that comes when you stop caring what others say or think about you. It is not arrogance, but liberation. Eventually, the universe confronts you with the very things you have been avoiding. The conversation you were afraid to have, the decision you kept postponing, the truth you did not want to face. These now stand before you like immovable mountains. In the past, you might have run. Now, for reasons you can't fully explain, you stay. You look these challenges in the eye and deal with them. This is not a coincidence. This is alignment. You have been placed in the exact situation where your healing can occur, not in comfort, but in confrontation. The Stoic thinker Cleanthes once prayed, "Lead me, Zeus, and you, destiny, up wherever you have assigned me." This is the prayer of someone who has stopped fighting reality and started cooperating with it. There is strength in surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender that leads to growth. With time, you begin to crave simplicity. The loud, overstuffed life that once felt exciting now feels suffocating. You stop seeking constant stimulation and instead seek spaciousness in your schedule, in your relationships, in your own mind. This is not because you are becoming dull or depressed. It is because your soul has stopped begging for noise to fill its emptiness. Silence no longer scares you. In fact, it becomes nourishing. You find pleasure in a slower pace, in fewer but deeper commitments, in living according to nature and reason, as Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, taught. Virtue, Zeno said, flourishes in simplicity. And when you taste this kind of simplicity, you realize it is not a loss but a gain. You have not lost your spark. You have simply stopped burning for things that never truly mattered. And then comes the final stage, the letting go. You stop clinging to outcomes, stop needing to control every variable, stop trying to prove your worth. Instead, you begin to want something far more powerful than more money, more fame, more recognition. You begin to want meaning, and meaning only rises from depth. It is born when your actions align with your values, when you live not for appearances, but for truth. This is the moment when you begin to live by what is essential. The universe, it seems, has been guiding you toward this all along, removing what is unnecessary so that you can finally see what cannot be taken away. This process is rarely easy. It can feel like everything familiar is being stripped away. It can feel like loss, like death, like standing in the middle of an empty field with no map. But if you resist the temptation to panic, you will notice that there is a kind of pattern to it all. The universe does not guide with lightning and thunder. It guides through patterns, through resistance, through discomfort. If you feel like you are being tested, like everything around you feels unfamiliar, that is not a sign that you are lost. It is a sign that you are no longer who you were. The old world no longer fits, and that is a good thing. The invitation then is to trust this process, to trust that the silence is not the end of your story, but the beginning of a new chapter. To trust that the isolation is not rejection, but preparation. To trust that the recurring challenges are not curses, but mirrors. To trust that the fading interest in shallow pleasures is not the loss of joy, but the deepening of it. To trust that the simplicity you crave is not emptiness, but clarity. And above all, to trust that meaning is rising in your life, even if you cannot yet see its full shape. Life will keep whispering. The question is whether you will make space to listen. Will you allow the quiet to teach you? Will you let go of what no longer serves you? Will you face what you have avoided? Will you choose depth over distraction? The universe has already begun its work. The signs are all around you. You are not being abandoned. You are being guided, shaped, refined. And when you emerge from this season, you will not be the same person who entered it. You will be someone stronger, clearer, freer, someone who no longer needs the world's applause because you have found your own.